this number. In fact, 43% of Republicans believe a special prosecutor should look into this, not Congress. How about Donald Trump's overall approval rating? It's holding steady, Allison. 45% approve, 52% disapprove. This is about where it was a month ago, and we've seen all the negative headlines he's been battling in that time. It shows he's got a pretty decent floor of support, though obviously still historically lower at this point in his presidency than his predecessors. And finally, look how divided the country is. Will Donald Trump's policies move the country in the right direction or wrong direction? 49% say the right direction. 50% of Americans say the wrong direction, Allison.
All right, so a good point of the analysis right now is whether or not he's maintaining that support because of what he's doing or despite what he's doing. So let's bring in CNN political analyst David Gregory. Let's continue this discussion. That is the question. You know, if the president looks at these poll numbers, I'm sure he will with his people, they'll say, hey, if we stick to taxes and jobs and bringing in things that might help wages, we're in good shape here because that's what people expect from us. And yet, look at everything the president's doing to dump cold water on that agenda.
Right, and this is, I mean, he simply can't control himself. I mean, that's clear. And nor can anyone else who is around him. I mean, for him to veer off into this state of affairs where he's accusing the former president of illegally wiretapping Trump Tower, him and his associates, and you have immediate pushback from the FBI director, and now the White House says, no, we don't really accept that denial. So the president, who considers the press, the media, an enemy of the state, is now at war with the intelligence community, both foreign and domestic. And is completely distracting himself from what he said he wanted to do, which was to help America win, to create new jobs. He had a good speech last week. He is the one who has put all of that at risk because he can't control his own behavior on Twitter, of all things. That's the big issue. And I think the larger issue beyond the polling, Chris and Allison, is what happens if there's a real provocation by an enemy of our president, of this administration? A real crisis. I keep coming back to that because that's going to happen in all likelihood. And then you test judgment, temperament, and readiness to deal with something like that on behalf of the American people.
Some people say it's already happening with North Korea. David Chalian, these, correct me if I'm wrong, these poll numbers that you just told us, the poll was taken before this weekend with all the latest
the bulk
news.
of the poll, Allison, was taken before the weekend. Some of it, some of the interviews were conducted, very few were conducted after his Saturday morning tweets.
Okay, that's interesting. But isn't it interesting, David Chalian, that 45% of respondents say, nah, not really that concerned about Russia connections?
Yeah, again, I think we're seeing partisanship drive a lot of that concern. If you're a Republican and you're with Trump, you believe that all of this is just people coming at him who want to discredit or devalue his legitimacy. But that doesn't mean that it shouldn't give pause to the White House, because it is still a majority of Americans who do express concern. I do want to pick up on two things David Gregory just said. One, talk about his strength of issues. We see in this poll 55% of Americans approve of the way he's handling the economy. That's 10 points higher than his overall job approval. It's something that he talked about quite a bit in his speech that was well received. You would think anybody looking at poll numbers would say, oh, hey, let's lean into this. This is our strong suit. Let's be sure we're talking about the economy every single day. The fact that he chose not to is certainly befuddling. And then, when you think about what he was tweeting about Saturday morning, guys, just ask this question. If indeed it is not something that President Obama is capable of doing, if that's just not how the process works with FISA, it does beg the question, if Donald Trump believes he did it, does Donald Trump believe he has the power to order up a wiretap on an American citizen at will?
Well, look, there's so many different layers of why this doesn't work for the president, but I think the most basic analysis goes to his own tweet. Put it up there. Just to show like what kind of legs he gave this situation, just because of how he explained it. How low has President Obama gone to tap my phones during the very sacred election process? This is Nixon, Watergate, bad or sick guy. Now, David Gregory, we have to remember, I know that the chattering class loves this story. Why deal with the difficulties and complexity of health care or tax reform or anything when you can just talk about this all day, and people will probably be more interested? But This man, as president of the United States, has the ability to pick up a phone and say, is there a FISA warrant that had anything to do with me? Find out. I want my answer in 5 minutes. He will get an answer in 5 minutes about whether or not this is real. So it's not about the truth. It's about something else. And it has to be some kind of calculation. But David, tell me, strain your faculties. How does this work for President Trump?
Well, because it delegitimizes those who are investigating him, who are trying to hold him accountable. That's the press, that's elements of the government, the intelligence community, the FBI. I mean, he wants to just kind of break all the circuits with all of that, because you're exactly right. He could run this information down. That's not what he wants to do. He wants to create a public spectacle, to create a huge distraction, to get talk show hosts on the radio or Breitbart News running off with these conspiracy theories, and then maybe try to get Congress to bite at that, maybe prove some of this stuff in their own investigations. But it's a diversion. And he's not dealing with the serious issue of what Russia tried to do, what Russia will try to do again this year, and again to him. I mean, again, what I find so amazing about all of this is that it's never occurred to him that maybe the Russians are trying to manipulate him, his administration, and other U.S. allies in a way that could be far more serious than whether Donald Trump thinks he looks bad, having fairly and squarely won the election.
Right.
Instead, he sees everything. And I think the other piece of this is how partisan this is, that we don't even have agreement based on our polling about whether the Russian attempt to manipulate the election is something that we can all agree is bad for America. That is about a huge breakdown in trust in institutions like the government, like the media. That's the kind of thing that's infecting our politics.
And just to be clear, on our reporting, Clapper, who is the former director of national intelligence, he came out and said there were no warrants like this. Not Comey, according to our reporting, but lower levels of the FBI, which may be more instructive because they're doing the work, right? They went to the DOJ and said, push back on this wiretapping. It's not true.
All right, David Gregory, David Chalian, thank you very much for all of the information. So what we're going to do is we're going to dig into the legality of wiretapping. When is it used?
Weekend, President Trump going on a tweet storm accusing President Obama of a Nixon Watergate-style plot to tap the phones at Trump Tower during the campaign. He called President Obama bad or sick. Now, here's what we know. There is no proof that the president has offered or that those surrounding these investigations have come forward with to justify these attacks. Let's discuss this situation. We have former CIA officer Evan McMullin. He launched a third-party run against Mr. Trump. And we got David Frum, senior editor for The Atlantic. Gentlemen, thank you for being here. Let's start with what are we talking about here with FISA? Put up some of the information for you guys at home as you're trying to figure your way through this about what FISA is, all right? You got this panel of 11 federal district court judges, and it's pretty simple, the concept here. It's that, hey, if you want to do wiretaps, you want to collect electronic data, you need a judge to say that it's okay. This is part of our evolving relationship with surveillance, right? So they have to show that it's relevant. There's a legal standard involved. It's not that high, but there is a process. So, Evan McMullin, the idea that the president picks up the phone and says, go wiretap this guy, that's not how it works. We all accept that as true, but that's a little bit of a distraction to this distraction. It's about whether or not this was going on. Do you feel confident that Clapper, the FBI word pushing up to the DOJ, gives you a solid basis of reckoning that this wiretap doesn't exist?
Yes, look, it would be hard to find a source more credible than James Clapper on this issue. He was director of national intelligence. He didn't mince his words yesterday on the Sunday show. He said very clearly that there was not collection of intelligence like this against Donald Trump or his campaign during the campaign or after the campaign before the inauguration.
Critics will say, Clapper, not only do I not believe him because what he said was true before, but it was about collecting metadata. I don't believe him.
Well, look, that's true, and you can have that complaint. Nobody's perfect. People say things that aren't accurate at times, and there was that episode with James Clapper. But still, I tend to believe this. And you also have the FBI pushing back, trying to get the DOJ, apparently, according to reports, to say, no, there was not any collection like this. But I think the important thing is that if there was this collection, it either happened illegally or legally. Legally, it would require this big process with the FISA court. Lots of people would be involved.
Which means they felt there was a relevant basis
And they
to
had
look at him.
they had information
Right.
to show that. If it was illegally, then you're talking about a conspiracy that would involve lots of different people that would be very hard to cover and extremely unlikely. And that, I think, is what President Trump needs to demonstrate.
Now, David, we are seeing some tortured defense by Trump surrogates on this, saying, hey, look, he just wants an investigation. He just wants the Senate and the House to investigate it like they're investigating everything else. That's all he wants. That doesn't hold a lot of water here, though, David, because this is a situation where the man could pick up the phone and know the answer to the question about whether or not this exists probably a lot faster than Congress.
On the contrary, I think it's a terrific idea, and I think we should give the president exactly what he is demanding. James Clapper's denial referenced the Trump campaign. Didn't talk about the Trump Organization, which has a long history of doing business with highly dubious and dangerous people inside Russia. So I won't hold myself out as an expert on the FISA process, but if there is any kind of warrant because intelligence agencies believe that the Trump Organization or the Trump family were connected to Russian crime or Russian espionage, yeah, I think we need to get to the bottom of that. So I think the answer to the president is absolutely yes. Let's have an independent hearing, not with Devin Nunes, who's in the House Intelligence Committee. They've taken a side. Not with Richard Burr. They've made it clear they're not interested in finding anything. But people who are credible and independent, let's get to the bottom of this. Was the president or the Trump Organization or anyone around him connected to Russian crime or Russian intelligence? That is a great question. Some of us have been asking for the answer to that for 2 years now.
David Frum did a very clever thing there. He
Yes,
took looking into the truth of the matters of this larger picture of any potential Russian connection to the Trump campaign. Okay, fine, fair point. What I'm saying is, this is not candidate or citizen Trump. This is President Trump. He could know whether or not there was a FISA warrant. How true is that proposition?
I think it's very likely true. I mean, it could be that there's an investigation of the president that the intelligence community or the law enforcement agencies don't want to reveal to the president. I'm not perhaps the best expert on that, but I think it's possible. But what's concerning is that the president is taking action based on information he's receiving from far-right conspiratorial media outlets. That is highly concerning. Donald Trump, now the President of the United States, has access to more information than literally anyone else in the world. And he is receiving information and being spun up and then taking action upon information that's coming from these less than credible, to put it nicely, sources. So that's what's really concerning here. And I agree with David Frum that we need a more serious investigation. Now, there are a lot of people who say it should be one thing or another. People talk about an independent commission. The challenge with that is that you need a president to sign in a law that allows that to happen, or a veto-proof majority in both chambers. That's unlikely to happen. So I think we need in Congress a special select committee that's bipartisan, could be bicameral, could be in the Senate. I don't think the House is credible right now on this, to investigate. And I also think we need a special counsel in the DOJ. Both of these two investigations serve different purposes and do different things. We need them both. It's very critical.
All right, David Frum, thank you very much.
Today, what's in it? Has the White House course corrected to clear all the legal hurdles?